What's going on, guys? Jazzy Butters 2 here, making the final video of 2022. Today we are going to be talking about just a retrospective of Marvel's Avengers in 2022 and what 2023 should most likely be for this game for it to at least make a better footprint. And just before we start, a few things. One, Happy New Year's. Hopefully 2023 will go well for us all. Number two, this video, unlike my others, isn't heavily, or at least majorly scripted. So I'm going off of pure thought, pure emotions on this, just going off of the cuff of what I think 2022 did for this game. And the final thing is if you like this video, please subscribe, or don't. It's your choice. So we are going to get into it. We're going from order, from what released first, to what happened to the end of this year. And the first thing that we need to go over is how this year was. This year was very experimental compared to 2021. 2021 was very set in stone. It had a roadmap. It pretty much had a lot that you would go for. And it was clear that they had a vision for what they were going for, especially whenever it comes to the narrative. But with this year, it was kind of like, where are we going with this? There was a lot of different changes, a lot of stuff happening, and I get it. Avengers was bought out by Embracer, and they're kind of low on developers right now. But a lot of their choices just felt like everybody wasn't on the wheel. And then you had the one guy who said he knows how to drive a car, but he's sitting there for 20 minutes trying to figure out how to turn it on. So it's kind of like it wasn't stable. And a big key factor of this that was shown was the lack of content that we actually got this year. Again, low numbers of devs. I get that completely. But I feel like with some of the things that were released this year, they were probably a waste within the long run, especially whenever it comes to narrative and some gameplay changes. But we'll get right into that. And then the next thing that was released, or the first thing that was released for the year, was the reworking of hero gear. Now, I think this was one of the better changes of this year. It basically went over just streamlining the gear sets, making some perks stick to those, and then making sure the gear was found in places where it would be found. So you wouldn't have to go all over Wakanda and then to New York and then to the Northwest to find the Apex power set gear. You could find it in like very specific missions and stuff. I think that was fine. Streamlining gear to a certain thing is pretty good, and it just makes the grinding easier and more obtainable for stuff like that. Overall, pretty good. No complaints with that. Next is the war table and onboarding rework. Now, this is one of the major things that I think was a waste of this year, because this screws with the narrative and gameplay so bad. Granted, one of the good things is whenever you are at a low power level, it will keep you at a certain area. So say you're power level 10, it'll keep you at New York. Okay, and then whenever you level up, you could go to the Utah Badlands, then Wakanda. I think that's fine. But from a narrative standpoint, it really screwed things up, because this was the update where Nick Fury returned out of nowhere. And it was never really explained how he returned, but he just did. We got like a cutscene of it, but that was about it. So I don't really understand where he came from. I guess we changed the timeline, but like, makes no sense. And then he just kind of sits there and talks about the Kree sometimes, how you need to prepare, which is fine. But for one, like I said, like, where'd he come from? And two, if you are a new player and you first open the game and then you play the campaign and Nick Fury is missing, and then you go into the actual multiplayer side, the Avengers Initiative, as they call it, and then you see Nick Fury, you're like, where did he come from? Where are you talking about the Kree in the future? It's not narratively in order. And that's one of the biggest problems with this year, especially. Like everything last year, Cosmic Cube, Ultron, War for Wakanda, that was all in order, including 2020 and 2021. But this one was very out of order. Next up that they released was the event rewards update to 175. That it was okay. I'll give it that. It was one of the good changes for the events. You know, it gave us superior gear, which allowed us to level up to 175 without doing the raid or stuff. I think one of the major complaints is for like maybe 2 or 3 of these events, you had to do it in multiplayer. Like 2, I know Tachyon was one. Maybe if they can make that solo, that would be nice. But otherwise than that, I mean, solo players, you have your way of leveling up, so that's fine. And then I'd say the biggest controversial thing that came from this year was Jane Foster's Thor. This has been a whole subject. For the longest time, for those who didn't know, Avengers has had this weird habit of getting the line of Echo heroes versus original heroes. It's been a thing for a while where some people are like, oh, Kate is an echo of Hawkeye. Oh, echo of this and that. Bucky's an echo of Cap. But for this one, Jane felt like she was a last-minute decision, and from what insiders are saying, apparently she was. Where he just switched it up, and I'm guessing it was for Thor Love and Thunder. But Jane was the character, and is the character, who is, by terms, pretty much an echo. She copies Thor's stuff quite a lot. She even has the same takedowns, mostly emotes and all that. Overall, I feel like this is one of those things where if they were just going to make her a complete echo, or at least like 80%, 95% echo, then they shouldn't have done her at all. I feel like She-Hulk would have been better, considering the fact that her show wasn't that far off. So if they just did She-Hulk and they didn't push her back, I feel like this would have been better overall. Jane, sure, yeah, she's fun. She has a couple of new things, but overall, it's just not, it didn't feel like it was worth it at the end of the day. It just felt like it switched up last minute and it didn't go anywhere. This is also the second time that we were introduced to hero events. The first one was with Spider-Man, and that did pretty well. And compared to his, Jane's was, quite frankly, a downgrade. Because you didn't really do much. You collected audio files, and there was like maybe 1 or 2 cutscenes, I think. I don't know. I didn't even complete hers because it just was that bad of a downgrade. But thankfully, they fixed this. Next is the minor addition of new Wasteland Missions. Now, I don't know if you guys know, but I love the Wasteland area. It is great. Like, it's basically just a dead world where there's Kree sentries and Kree ships everywhere. So I enjoyed the aesthetic of it. And I think, contrary to popular belief, this was quite a good update. Because by adding these missions, it just gave us something to do. It gave us some replayable value in the Wastelands. It gave us some nice stuff to do, more photo mode shots. It just gave us some more missions to do. It gave a bit more variety and just range, which I thought was nice. And then we get to the second most controversial thing of this year for Avengers. No Rest for the Wicked. This was the next narrative story mission for this game after the raid, I believe, since you want to count that. And this is basically where Monica is running out of resources and the Avengers are starting to catch up to her. And at the end of the day, you know, she's making her last stand by pulling MODOK out of the river and trying to revive him. And then the boss fight is basically just we have to fight Monica and an Exo for the 3rd time, counting her campaign one and her one on Last Avenger Standing. So we fight Monica and an Exo, and then there's another clone of that Exo, and then we kill her, and, well, we don't kill her, we beat her, and then MODOK appears, and they both teleport away randomly. And this is the first sign of the narrative taking a very large dip in quality. For one, the cutscenes were definitely not all there. For example, Cosmic Cube, The Raid, War for Wakanda, Hawkeye Future Imperfect, even some stuff like that, like the iconic missions. Those had some very well rendered and mocap cutscenes, whereas No Rest for the Wicked felt very wooden. It felt like it was manually animated on a time crunch. It didn't feel like it was as cinematic as it should be. Granted, there was a shot where MODOK appeared, and it looked pretty decent, but it didn't really do that well from a cutscene standpoint, and I feel like this is something that we will see a lot more, if especially talking about like cloning labs and stuff. And then for the narrative, it didn't really connect. It didn't really click either, because when it came to that, okay, so Monica revived MODOK, but okay, MODOK escaped, and now he's back. Although he was bald in like the chamber, so now he's not bald. He has hair. Okay, I guess that was a visual thing. So Monica decides to ship out something. She decides to deal with something later, but we don't really know what that is unless that's Bucky. But even then, that's not really 100% confirmed, so we don't know where that's going. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then Monica just teleports away. Like, that, we don't even know where she is now. So she's still out there, and we just don't know. Crap. Like, it's the weirdest thing, because Monica escaped, and then MODOK teleports to cloning labs and then starts to take that over. And meanwhile, the Avengers are still confused as to how Monica could clone herself. Like, it's weird. They know she's back, but how she clones herself is... I could have sworn that Kamala and Bruce saw the cloning process in the campaign, but I guess not. So, okay, whatever. Overall, the narrative for that just didn't click compared to everything else. Like, this is the big thing again. It's one of my biggest gripes. Cosmic Cube and the Raid were like the end of well put together narrative. Especially, like, even the time travel stuff made sense. But this one doesn't. Well, I guess ever since Nick Fury, it didn't. But okay. Moving on to the next thing. Sorry for that bit of a ramble. Next we have Bucky and Cloning Labs. I'm connecting these two together. Bucky was the second hero and final hero released for this year. And he was also a bit of a mixed bag. Literally and, well, just literally and from a standpoint, yes. See, Bucky is the first hero who is actually mixed, as in he is a remix of all the other heroes pretty much. He takes in a lot of things from Cap, Widow, Spider-Man, I think Hulk at one point, something like that. He uses a lot of other heroes' things and then he makes it his own. His most unique thing is his gun. But granted, I will give it this. Bucky is a very fun hero to play, and even though he reuses quite a lot of other hero stuff, they made it so it is definitely unique and it doesn't feel like he's playing like other heroes. He also has a traversal upgrade compared to everybody else, so that's a plus. And his gun feels really nice. So Bucky is the prime example of what to do with a hero if you can't make him all original. And I like what they did with him. They did pretty well. I'll give him credit on that. His story was pretty nice. I like the relationship between Natasha and him and Steve, and how he came back after this event, which we will get into. Spoilers for anyone who did see it. But let's get into the controversial part. This is the thing that everybody was hyped for, I guess, but nobody expected it to be this bad. As a matter of fact, they expected Bucky to be worse. But Cloning Labs, this baby is definitely a mission. It's a mission. It's an OLT, I guess. Cloning Labs was a mission that was supposed to be released at near the launch of the game, so practically 2 years ago. And overall, they delayed it, and then they delayed it, and then they delayed it, and now it's here. So, you know, and instead of having us fight 4 Taskmasters or 4 Abominations, they decided to replace the final boss fight with MODOK. A couple of things on this. One, I like the MODOK boss fight. Granted, does it have any phases? No. Is he really that strong in terms of health? No. There was a clip where me, Lejeune, and Peter Odin, we pretty much killed him in 6 seconds. But then again, we are overpowered like that. Overall, it was... The boss fight is cool. You know, we finally have a way to fight MODOK on repeat once you get to that power level anyways, which will take a couple of weeks. And, you know, overall, it was nice. I like the boss fight, but everything else about the mission, this is where it gets tricky. Cloning Labs, by name, is a lab of clones, yet we didn't get to see or hear about a single clone within this mission. Well, I mean, besides that one Quinjet dialogue where they're like, oh, this is where they're making the clones, but we never really saw any clones. So making MODOK the boss fight for this didn't make sense if they didn't change the name. And the mission was definitely shorter than expected. From what was heard anyways, it was supposed to be much longer. Like a couple more things. And overall it just wasn't. You could complete this mission in like 11 to 10 minutes, and that is a big issue. For a name like Omega Level Threat, it certainly doesn't seem like one. And quite frankly, it reuses a lot of past puzzles that you've seen before. Like really easy past things like kill these 5 enemies, open these chambers, free the Inhumans. And it just didn't roll well. Like it didn't really roll well at all. And of course there were a couple of bugs. There was this one puzzle where you had to, all step on these points and then all step on the same button at the same time. Well, there was like constant waves of enemies coming at you. Sorry, my nose is a bit stuffy. Well, there were constant enemies coming at you. I found that puzzle fun because it felt like a definite challenge where you had to time it with your teammates and then you tried not to die. You had to fight your way off and then just timing everything. I found that was probably the second best part of that OLT because it felt new, something that we haven't done before, really, like that. And overall, it works. It works out really well. Everything else, though, it just felt bland, reused. And granted, it was a 2-year-old mission. About to be 3. It was a 2-year-old mission. But if they were going to bring it back, I feel like they should have reworked or added at least a couple of things. And they should have kept in the boss fight. Because it's Cloning Labs. Why would you not keep in the clones for the boss fight? Like, just have you fight the 4 abominations, then you move on, fight 5 enemies, and then you move on to fight MODOK. That would have made more sense. And, like, the final cutscenes themselves, again, it's that no rest for the wicked type thing where it was very woodenly animated. Granted, they made an update where MODOK's facial expressions were better, but basically it was just MODOK brags about how, he's back and he's better than ever, and then we beat him, and then we watch him burn alive and die, which is a literal thing that they updated. Like, originally he didn't have any burning effects or anything, but now he legit, like, his stuff catches on fire, and we just watch as he burns alive, and we do nothing but emote on him, pretty much. And then this is where we get the reveal, spoiler alert, that Bucky has been under Monica's or AIM's arm the whole time, and he's been activated by AIM, doing tasks for them, Winter Soldier program and all that. And it's weird because we just figured this out at the end of Cloning Labs. This is narratively canon. So whenever you first play Bucky and they talk about how you rescued him, it's fine. But as soon as you go into Cloning Labs and you learn that Bucky's there and they didn't know about it, the Avengers didn't know about it, now it brings up a lot of questions. Like, why would you put that there? I feel like it would have been better if they put it in the No Rest for the Wicked villain sector. Because then you could go in and play as Bucky and then there wouldn't be a problem. Because it's explained through the narrative. And this is another thing about the War Table onboarding rework that went wrong. The missions, like, the setup is fine, but you could play Cosmic Cube before playing any other narrative stuff. And it's weird. But yeah, besides that, the Cloning Labs mission itself was okay. It had a fun boss fight, a fun puzzle, but everything else was pretty bland. And you could get through it very fast, which I guess is okay. Bucky is fine too. Now on to some of the last things. One, Cloning Lab gear. That's a whole separate thing in itself. This one brought in nanite gear, which is pretty interesting. See, nanite gear is basically just giving status to melee heroes for light attacks. And granted, while it's not the best way to solve the issue to melee, it definitely does work for what it does. and it definitely improves melee characters by a lot. So I think it's a very good change, or a very good new feature to what they... My computer turned off. Okay. It's a very good feature to what they did for melee. I've done a lot of testing, especially with Iron Man melee, Spider-Man melee. It does pretty well. So I'll give it that. You guys get a plus for that, devs, if you are watching this. You probably aren't, because I cover leaks, but I mean, you know. And then the final thing that we probably all expected to be on this recap were comic skins and MCU skins. Now, the comic skins, oh boy, they have taken a rise this year. 2021, we got like a couple. Like Werewolf Cap and Fear of Iron Man. But 2022, oh man, we are getting these back to back. Like right now, as of recording, we got the announcement of Hawkeye as a literal bird, an Iron Man model Prime. Like, holy crap, those are some big ones. And we also got quite a lot of other ones this year, like Herald of Galactus Thor, some Kamala ones, Hulk, World Breaker. Overall, the skins were well, for comic book skins anyways. I really enjoy how they're rising. It's something that we've been asking for a lot. MCU skins, they're still pretty decent. They've never changed. Although there has been a recent controversy over, you know, the helmetless variants and battle damage variants, where the variants actually cost like $5 or $2 depending on the rarity. Honestly, I could see why they did that, because, you know, they're outsourcing these skins, so they will cost either way, regardless of if you add like a new hair or just take the mask off. So I get that it'll cost, but at the same time, I understand that, you know, people buy these skins originally, so to have them pay for something that's so minor, it is frustrating, and I get both sides. But at the same time, it's a business. You got to make a profit. Avengers already, I mean, it's stable, but it's not really gaining like that, so I understand both sides. And now, the final consensus of 2022. This was a year. It's not the best year. It was okay. I'd even say below average at the very best. But it definitely was a wake-up call, or it should be a wake-up call to Avengers on what they should do. It was very experimental, but I think they learned a couple of things. One, heroes can have other assets from pre-existing heroes, but you should not and cannot do them like how you did it with Jane. You need to do it like how you did it with Bucky, where it's remixed and it feels unique enough to the point where you could call it their own hero. And Bucky had quite a few new things, which I respect. So, make your heroes like Bucky if you're going to continue doing that. There has been a couple of things where it's been stated that the next heroes will be She-Hulk, Ironheart, Shuri, and then someone else. And if that is the case, okay, I get it. You could reuse a lot from them, sure. But in that case, make sure that you do it like Bucky and not like Jane. That is all that I am preaching for heroes. Besides adding War Machine to the game instead of Ironheart, because come on now. The second thing they learned is they should not push out and post stuff if it's not ready. No Rest for the Wicked and Cloning Labs were basically two connected pieces of a main part of a story. No Rest for the Wicked was the setup. Cloning Labs was the afterthought. Not afterthought. It was the second part to No Rest for the Wicked. It set it up. It was fine. It was just like one large campaign mission, really. Like a large piece of it. And it worked, sure, but it didn't really feel good considering the cutscenes and the fact that there was stuff missing. Like, according to Miller, who is a reliable source at this point, practically call him an advertiser for this game, by the way that he pushes stuff out and makes it accurate, there was like a whole part where you would see like a Kree sentry in one of the missions, and there's a whole voice line for it where Kamala goes, "Another Kree sentry?" And that would have been cool to see, because we know that there are Kree sentries on Earth, and the fact that they're using more Terrigen, that would make sense. And we do see like a bit of that, there's like a voice line talking about where she got all this stuff and stuff. But seeing another Kree sentry like that in like another room, even, that would have been sick. like that would have been cool to see. Like experimenting, maybe some drones flying around trying to cut it apart. But overall, we just didn't get that, and so a lot of things felt rushed. They didn't feel connected. A lot of the narrative is off now. And then the final thing they learned is listen to the community more. And I think this is very important because the community does have a lot of good ideas. Granted, for how much I get into beef with him on Twitter, Allfather, he does have some pretty good ideas that would work on like a short run. I don't know about a long run, but on a short run, they would be pretty cool. I know he did like a UI thing for maskless variants, and that didn't turn out well, but that's on Avengers' part, not his. So overall, don't push out things that aren't finished. If you want to make remixed heroes, make them like Bucky, not Jane, and listen to the community on certain things. Now, on to the final part, 2023. What should 2023 be for Marvel's Avengers? I've been thinking about this for quite a while, and after looking over everything, I think 2023 should be a mission year for Avengers. Not a hero year, a mission year. And I know it's going to sound bad, controversial even, because 2023, you know, it should have all these heroes. Supposedly, if this is the last game's year, it should have a couple more heroes. But hear me out. If you made an Avengers game with the core cast, plus Kamala, no DLC heroes, let's say we never got that, but you had all these different missions, I feel like people would have been fine. Like, you have different patrol modes that you could play online. You have, you know, Tachyon, where you could go back in time or something. The campaigns. Like, if you did that, it would have been fine. Like, you really wouldn't need any more heroes because you have all these missions to do and it would keep you occupied. Some replayable like a horde mode. So 2023 should primarily focus on missions. And we do know a couple of things that are coming supposedly next year, going off of leaks and data mines. One, Ultron, and there should be a couple of new enemies with him. There was like the Ultron Synthoid and then the Ultron Core. I don't know if the Ultron Core is a comic thing. Somebody tell me in the comments down below. And then patrol mode. And then that's really all that we know for like major missions like that. Besides She-Hulk, of course. But she's a hero and she'll come with hero events, not really new missions like that. So they're off to a good start with Ultron and patrol mode. Those are two major things that have been teased or worked on, and they should be coming if they could squeeze them through in time. Patrol mode should be huge in the Wasteland. I don't know if they're still doing it in the Wasteland, but it would be nice if they switched it over to New York. Ultron, that will be a villain sector that should have phases, and they shouldn't take that for granted. Everything else, though, new missions, horde mode. I feel like that is a major thing. I know that they could do it because they have done it before. There were some Wakanda missions where it was like that, but not fully. Okay, fine, but it had waves. That is your system. And then in Cloning Labs, continuous enemies kept spawning. Boom. Put those two together, take away the save the generator stuff, and that is your horde mode. You could reuse different things like that. Second thing, like I said, New York patrol mode instead of the Wastelands. The Wastelands are fine. Cool. And if you can make it work, sure. I'm all on board with that. I'm a Wasteland guy. But New York, I was just playing the Hawkeye Future Imperfect campaign mission, the first one. And there are these enemies, these synthoids, that legit have police like paintovers, and they actually have the police lights whenever you see them. That would be really cool. And there are also some minor cutscenes where trucks are driving by, crashing into things. You have to defuse bombs, you know, and you have to save a couple of people. Or at the very least, pretty much, like a couple people run away when new enemies show up. Like, that mission, the first mission, is a good example of what patrol mode could be for New York. And if you add respawning villains, like you would in the patrol mode of the Wastelands, that would be pretty cool. Like, imagine Ultron in the Wastelands for patrol mode. That would be nice. And then, you know, you could have a couple other missions, like, you know, reworking a couple missions, like the helicarrier one. People have been asking that for a while. Like, put that in the Avengers initiative. But have that be a horde mode one, where you just have to defend the helicarrier for a certain amount of waves, let's say 15 waves, and if you make it, you get a couple of exotics. Boom. Horde mode again. But the major thing is reuse some campaign missions, then put them in the Avengers initiative and give them something to do. Overall, Avengers 2023 should be a mission year. 2022 was okay, but we have a lot more to work on, including adding War Machine to the game. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. This is Jazzy Butters 2. Happy New Year. Please like and subscribe if you want to, or don't. It's always a free option. And I will see you guys in 2023. Bye. Wear your seatbelt. Please be sure to finish your Happy Meals. All right. See ya. Bye.